You're rich!
If he could just find himself again, be the man that I knew him to be, the man that I know he can be.
No! Oops.
What the hell, Kev?
It's a fake.
So how much do you need?
Not a whole lot. Only around $8 billion.
8 billion?
How much?
About $5,000 a bottle.
Where is all this money coming from?
Walter had just contacted his teacher, Tristan Gabriel, on a video call to help decide who was right about the antique box, him or Kevin. Everyone in the store was very impressed to see that Walter actually knew the most prominent antique appraiser in the country. Then one of them realized that Kevin was the guy that they'd heard about who married into the Jones family to sponge off of them. Walter smiled smugly. At first, he thought that Kevin might be some kind of genius at antique appraisal. But if what everyone was saying was true, he didn't have anything to worry about. He started to feel even more contempt for Kevin. "Kevin, what are you doing?" Lily tugged on her husband's sleeve to try and get him to back down. But Kevin waved Lily off casually. He picked up the box and held it so that it would show up clearly on Walter's phone. Walter saw that Kevin actually wanted his teacher to get a good look and started to worry that maybe he'd made a mistake. But the onlookers didn't realize what was going on. They thought that Kevin was just acting foolish and would soon be put in his place. Walter began to wonder if Kevin knew something that he didn't. Then Kevin spoke directly to the camera. "Tristan, open your eyes and take a good look at the box. You can see that it probably belonged to the French nobility in the 14th century. My guess is it was involved in a marriage proposal. Don't you think so?" Then he said very impolitely, "Or do you need to get new glasses?" "Kevin, don't be so rude. How can you speak to Mr. Gabriel like that?" Truman was shocked at Kevin's behavior. Walter got angry too. "Who do you think you are, Kevin? Nobody talks to Mr. Gabriel that way." The rest of the onlookers were also taken aback. How could Kevin be so disrespectful to a national expert? But what they heard next surprised them even more. "Is that you, Kevin? Kevin Williams?" Gabriel became very excited and said, "I'm sorry I didn't notice it was you. Walter, what kind of cheap cell phone are you using? Can't you get a clearer image? I can barely see anything." Walter couldn't believe what he was hearing. His phone was brand new and top of the line, but he didn't dare correct his mentor. "Are you sure it's not a crack in your screen? I remember you were always dropping your phone." Kevin was chatting with him like they were old friends, and the onlookers were dumbfounded. Truman was absolutely speechless as he tried to figure out how Kevin knew the man. And Lily stared at Kevin, wondering how many other things he hadn't told her. "I know what you mean. I'll be more careful about that, buddy." Gabriel replied to Kevin like there was no difference in age between them. None of the other people in the store understood what was going on, especially Walter. He looked at Kevin in disbelief. He'd been studying with Tristan Gabriel for almost 8 years, and he'd never seen anything like this. "Sorry to have bothered you with this, my friend. I'll call you back when we have more time to chat." Then Kevin disconnected the call on Walter's phone. He handed the phone back to him and put the box back on the counter. Then he picked up the rag and wiped the box a little more, revealing the intricate details of the carvings for everyone to see. "What are you all looking at? Do I have spinach in my teeth or something?" Kevin felt everyone's eyes on him as they tried to grasp what they just witnessed. Was Kevin just as good as Tristan Gabriel? It certainly sounded like it. Kevin shook his head as he thought about how he knew Tristan. When he was a child, his family was really close to the Finch family and especially to Frederick Finch. So he ended up living with their family and studying with them for almost 8 years. Gabriel trained under Frederick much later. Frederick liked Kevin a lot and recognized his raw talent, so he helped him develop and hone his abilities. Since Kevin had met Frederick before him, Gabriel jokingly treated the young man like an older brother. "So, Truman, do you still want to buy this medieval ivory box?" Kevin asked with a smile. "Of course I'll buy it," Truman replied excitedly. Now that he knew more about the box, he was tempted to keep it as a family heirloom. It would be a shame to turn around and sell it. "Mr. Jordan, are you asking the same price?" Truman hesitated now that everyone was certain that they were looking at an extremely valuable antique. "Of course I am. I gave you my word, didn't I? $2 million, no more, no less." Mr. Jordan was also very excited. The other antique experts in the room were a little jealous of Truman, but not too upset because they wouldn't have been able to afford a $2 million purchase anyway. Their shops weren't doing nearly as well as Anderson Antiques. Kevin looked at Mr. Jordan and gave him a nod of approval. He could easily have tried to increase the price after finding out the true value of the item, but he didn't. "Well, my wife and I came here to do some antiquing. I guess we'll go take a little stroll." Kevin took Lily's hand and started to walk towards the door. But Lily didn't say anything more. She just gave Kevin a wink. Everyone stared at Kevin in absolute awe. They definitely wanted to follow him around. If he was interested in anything in one of the local shops, it was guaranteed that it wouldn't be junk. Kevin realized he needed to get rid of the group so he and Lily could wander more freely. "I think I saw some Chicago Cubs autographed baseballs in the store halfway down the block. It looks like they're only asking for half of what they're worth." As soon as the words came out of his mouth, the whole group practically sprinted for the door. Phoebe's father looked a little concerned. "Don't worry, Truman. They're asking for half of what they're worth, but I know they only paid half of what they're asking. The store will get a hefty profit, and so will everyone else." Kevin smiled reassuringly. Truman Anderson didn't know what to say for a moment. When Kevin and Lily left the shop, Truman sighed with relief, but also a little disappointment. Kevin seemed to have become a gifted appraiser. With training from Frederick Finch, he was far superior to any other young appraisers in the country, let alone in the city of Chicago. Unfortunately, Kevin was already married, and Truman would never want to see his daughter break up a marriage. "Truman, what's the matter with you? You need to let your children find their own way to happiness. There are some things you can't do anything about." Mr. Jordan seemed to be reading Truman's mind. "You're right, but it's tough to let go." Truman shook his head and put the thought out of his mind. When Kevin and Lily walked out of the antique shop, Phoebe and Walter followed closely behind them. "What else can I do for you, Phoebe?" Kevin asked with a smile. "Thank you so much for all your help today. Can I treat you to dinner?" Phoebe really wanted to spend more time with Kevin. "I'm sorry, Phoebe, but I have plans today. Let's get together another time." Since the Night King was coming that evening, Kevin had to buy him the antique sword that was in one of the shops down the street. "I guess we can try another time," Phoebe said nonchalantly. As Walter stood there watching them talk, he wasn't jealous at all. Even his own teacher had been showing respect to Kevin. On top of that, Walter really wanted to get to know Kevin so he could benefit from his advice. "Honey, what do you have going on? I thought we were going antiquing." Lily was unsure about Kevin's plans. "I found out that there's an antique sword next door, and it's really interesting. I decided to go and have a look, and if the price is right, I plan to buy it." Kevin was being deliberately secretive. When it concerned the Night King and the Alliance, the less people knew, the better.
"Let's go over and take a look together. I'd like to learn as much from you as I can."
Walter was sincerely interested. After all, if he didn't have an inquisitive mind, Gabriel wouldn't have taken him on as a student. "Okay, let's go see if they have anything interesting." Kevin nodded his head lightly and led the group into the antique shop next door. As soon as they entered the shop, they could tell it was different from the other antique stores in the neighborhood. Everywhere you looked, there were antique weapons, swords, daggers, shields, pikes, helmets. It was an impressive collection. Some of them were very rare, but a lot of the items would only appeal to very specific tastes. The owner was a thin, middle-aged man who was dozing by the counter. Kevin took Lily's hand and scanned the shop. Finally, his eyes fell on a rusty antique sword that was missing its scabbard. "I'd like to see that sword, sir." Kevin knocked on the counter several times with his knuckles to wake the man up.
$400,000,
the man announced as he yawned.
$400,000 for what? Can't we have a look at it?"
Walter asked in surprise. I'm not in the mood right now. The owner didn't seem to like dealing with the public.
Is that how you do business?
Walter was a young and energetic man, and he was getting very angry at the poor service. Kevin gestured at Walter to calm down, and then he spoke to the man with a smile. Okay, 400,000. Now it's going to cost you 800,000. The man glanced at Kevin with a twinkle in his eye. Is that how you do business? We're willing to spend $400,000 and then you double the price? Phoebe was becoming irate. That's right. What kind of place is this? Lily took Kevin's hand and pulled him toward the door. Honey, let's go. Well, as the saying goes, you shouldn't look a gift horse in the mouth. You're training in herbal medicine, aren't you? Well, my swords are only for customers who are ready to use them. I don't let them go very easily. That makes sense. 800,000 then? Kevin agreed with a broad smile. Kevin! Phoebe was shocked. Honey! Lily was surprised too. They were afraid that Kevin was being cheated. Walter couldn't speak at all. He just stared blankly at Kevin. Why are you buying this sword? The man asked Kevin unemotionally. Well, I think you're right, Kevin replied matter-of-factly. Since your swords are only for those with talent and ability, I'll let the sword judge me. The shop owner took a long, hard look at Kevin, then he turned around and took the sword off the shelf and put it on the counter. As Phoebe and Walter looked closely at the sword, they seemed a bit disappointed in its condition. Kevin stretched out his hand and trapped the sword with his fingers. The metal seemed to vibrate like a tuning fork, and it took a long time for the tone to dissipate. It's a good sword. I'll take it. Kevin pulled his black bank card out and placed it on the counter. When he saw the black card, Walter took a deep breath. Now he realized that Kevin had to be loaded. And Walter felt really ashamed about his first impression of Kevin. He was as wrong as he could be. No, you don't choose the sword. The sword chooses you. The man pulled out a long wooden box and placed the sword in it. Why are you doing that, sir? Kevin asked with a smile. Well, you said that you'd let the sword judge you. Let's see what happens. He pushed the box towards Kevin and then he sat back in his chair. I've had enough of this. Let's go, honey. Lily tried to pick up the big box so they could leave, but no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't even move it. By now, Phoebe and Walter were starting to see how unique this sword was. I told you that my swords are only for those who are ready for them. Weren't you listening? Then the man closed his eyes again. I'll try. Kevin, who was very motivated to have the sword, concentrated his strength. When he put his hand on the wooden box, the store's owner suddenly opened his eyes and a slight smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. All of a sudden, the expression on Kevin's face began to change. He started to feel a bit of a shiver and goosebumps started to pop up on his arms. The wooden box vibrated for a moment. Thank you, sir, Kevin suddenly exclaimed. Now, please leave. You've interrupted my nap. When they got outside, they found a place to eat and then drove down to Navy Pier to walk around and have a little fun. Finally, after Walter left with Phoebe, Kevin and Lily went to see a movie before returning home. It had probably been the most enjoyable day they'd spent since they got married. But before he could sleep, Kevin wanted to know more about the antique sword he just bought. I had a really nice time with you. I've missed this. Do you want to come in? Lily smiled as she looked into Kevin's eyes. Standing outside of Lily's front door, Kevin took a deep breath. I wish that I could stay with you, but there's something that I have to do. Lily pursed her perfect lips. What could be more important than you and me? Kevin stepped forward. I'm doing this so that there can be a you and me. Seeing Lily's eyes well with tears, Kevin placed his strong hand on her soft cheek. I promise that it will all make sense to you one day. Before Lily could respond, Kevin turned around and left her apartment, grasping the box containing the antique sword he just purchased. 10 minutes later, Kevin got to his apartment at Corwin Tower pretty quickly because traffic on Lakeshore Drive was so light this late at night. As soon as he got off his private elevator, he saw a shadowy figure sitting on the sofa. Who's that? Kevin's whole body suddenly tensed and he reached into his jacket to pull out the Night Dagger. He couldn't see who was there, but someone had broken into his home. Kevin hit the light switch, ready to take on the intruder. The Night King stood up from the couch and turned toward Kevin.
That's no way to greet your mentor. Why are you so surprised? I told you I'd be here tonight, didn't I?
Why didn't you tell me you'd let yourself in? I thought you were a burglar. Kevin relaxed and put his dagger away.
In the 2 minutes since you came in, you've had 10 chances to see me.
The Night King scolded Kevin.
Have you already forgotten what I told you?
You taught me to be alert and to respond firmly. Kevin didn't show any signs of weakness when he replied. The Night King nodded.
You're right. Now, have you brought something for me?
Kevin rubbed his head and tossed the wooden box on the floor. The Night King immediately stepped toward it and smashed it open with his foot. He quickly picked up the sword and held it up in the light.
Yes, it's a decent little weapon,
the Night King commented as he examined it. You haven't told me what the sword is for. Kevin had been feeling drawn to the weapon ever since he touched it at the antique shop, but it was in horrible condition, more like a piece of scrap metal. The Night King seemed to read Kevin's mind.
The name of this sword is Cold Arrow.
As he finished saying this, he slammed the sword against the fireplace mantle and all the rust instantly fell away. Before Kevin could react, the Night King took his hand and cut it with the blade of the sword. Kevin's blood immediately gushed out and splashed on the cold metal. What are you doing? Kevin had no idea what was going on and tore part of his shirt to stop the flow of blood from his cut. Thanks to his improved healing, the wound clotted up very quickly.
This sword has been dormant for so many years. It needed some blood to wake it up.
The Night King pointed towards the sword, which was now glowing the same deep red shade as Kevin's blood. Taking a deep breath, Kevin looked at his healed wound. And now that it has absorbed my blood, this sword will answer only to me.
Exactly.
The Night King nodded as he solemnly placed the sword into Kevin's hand. Kevin was still stupefied by this unusual ceremony. Well, may I ask what's going on?
Are you sure you really want to know?
The Night King stared into Kevin's eyes and asked him,
Haven't you noticed anything at all strange lately?
Kevin understood right away what the Night King was talking about. He put down his sword and turned toward his mentor. Something powerful is happening in Chicago.
You truly are more clever than any man that I have ever met before. Tell me what you found out.
The Night King walked confidently back to the sofa and sat down. Kevin started to list all the recent events that he'd witnessed. The appearance of the Myriads, the Alliance, the School for the Healing Arts, all the powerful and rich showing up in Chicago with very advanced training in herbalism and martial arts. It's like there's a storm brewing.
You're right.
The Night King immediately interrupted Kevin before he could finish what he was saying.
It's time to let you know a few things. That way you can start preparing early. This may just save your life.
The Night King spoke casually, but Kevin could tell that he was very serious.
There are good and bad forces at work, and they're converging on the city. You found your way into 3 of the organizations, but there are many more.
The Night King paused for a moment while he thought about what to say next.
Sometimes, someone comes along whose entire body, right down to their DNA, is open to vast improvements.
That someone is me, Kevin whispered to himself. The Night King smiled.
For your entire life, people have recognized your potential. Frederick Finch taught you to appreciate history. Your teachers knew that you sometimes didn't put in the effort to succeed as you should have, and I saw your potential too.
Do you mean I'll be part of this battle that's coming? Kevin asked again.
There's something unique about your DNA that's left you open to much quicker and greater changes than other people. The pills that you've been working on are more than just herbal supplements. There are chemicals in the natural world that modern chemists and drug manufacturers haven't dreamed of. You're already very different from the man you were when your friend gave you your first power pill. That's why you can heal so quickly and help others to heal too. You're unlocking your true potential." It started to make sense to Kevin. His hearing and eyesight already seemed sharper, and he'd gotten far stronger than he should have for the effort he was putting in. He definitely felt different lately. "Chicago is going to become the first battlefield of a great struggle," the Night King said thoughtfully. "We're going to fight a war." Kevin braced himself as he realized what this could mean. "It will be a difficult struggle, and there's no guarantee of victory. The forces we'll face have been underground for a long time, waiting to pounce." The Night King's face turned grim. Kevin had been wondering for a long time why so many odd things had been happening in his city. The Night King walked over to the small cocktail bar in the corner of Kevin's living room and poured himself a shot of liqueur. He took a sip and continued to explain Kevin's purpose. "Today, although science and technology are developing rapidly, the quickest way to prepare is the path that you've already taken. A lot of people are going to depend on you, and it's only going to get stranger from here on out." Kevin felt a cold shiver run through his body. "But don't worry, Kevin. Even the darkest forces that we face don't have the advantages that you do. Not even your own relatives in the Williams family. Don't forget that your DNA also comes from your mother's side of your family. You're like a sponge for the herbal concoctions you've been making and the ones that you'll be able to make. And you won't face all of this alone." The Night King let out a sigh after he said this. For a moment, Kevin felt like someone was watching the two of them, even though they were on the top floor of one of the tallest buildings in Chicago. He tried to shake off the feeling. After hearing everything that the Night King had told him, Kevin felt a little numb. No anger at what some people were planning and no joy at finding out just how different he was, just numb. The Night King was still standing in the middle of the living room while Kevin looked at the floor and tried to process all of it. Why can't both sides just talk it over? I'd hate for innocent people to get hurt. Kevin couldn't help wondering out loud.
Kevin's life takes a dramatic turn as the Night King reveals his true potential and prepares him for an impending battle. What are the true intentions of the forces gathering in Chicago? And how will Kevin face the challenges ahead?
"I know what you're thinking." The Night King slowly walked over to Kevin and patted him reassuringly on the shoulder. "Don't waste your energy worrying about it right now. Remember that this has been going on since long before you were born. Your priority right now is to learn as much as you can about herbal medicine and build up your own power. You are our only hope." The Night King sounded very earnest as he gave Kevin this advice. "I understand what I need to do." Kevin seemed to come back to life and he had a gleam in his eye. "It's not about accomplishments. I want you to practice and train so that you can protect yourself." The Night King was as straightforward with Kevin as he could be. Kevin was stunned to hear him say that. This wasn't going to be easy. The Night King sighed as he straightened his coat and started to walk toward the elevator. "Well, now that you know what we're facing, it's time for me to leave Chicago. Don't forget to go to the Alliance headquarters the day after tomorrow for our leader's birthday. It's imperative to your journey." Before Kevin could reply, the Night King had already gotten in the elevator. Kevin's head was spinning from all this information. After being rejected by his own family and Lily's too, now he'd play a part in some kind of fight between good and evil forces that were going to be gathering in Chicago. Just as he closed his eyes, his phone rang. The caller ID showed that it was Professor Colt. Kevin quickly answered. "Is everything okay? Why are you calling me so early in the morning?" "You think that 9 o'clock is early?" Professor Colt said with a smile. "Don't forget that the herbalism contest will be held at noon today. Whatever you're doing right now, you need to drop it and get over here by 10. I'll be waiting for you at the campus entrance." Kevin sprang up from the sofa and assured her that he'd get there as fast as he could.
Kevin drove to campus in record time and spotted Professor Colt standing by the school's main entrance. She was wearing a bright red dress. How could he possibly miss seeing her? "You got here faster than I could have ever imagined. Are you secretly a superhero?" Professor Colt walked over to Kevin and greeted him with a smile. "I wouldn't think of letting you down." Kevin was also grinning. "That's enough chit-chat. Come along with me. A lot of people will be attending the contest. If we don't hurry, we're bound to get stuck in a traffic jam." Professor Colt turned around and walked towards the parking lot. "Where will the contest be held, Professor?" Kevin asked suspiciously. He'd always thought that herbalism should be kept out of the public eye, and he expected that the contestants would meet in some remote place. How could there possibly be a traffic jam? "It's in Grant Park, down by the lake, of course." Professor Colt walked briskly to her car while she filled Kevin in on the details. Grant Park was one of the most popular places in Chicago, and definitely not secluded. When Kevin and Professor Colt arrived, the park was already full of people. If there hadn't been reserved parking for contestants, they never would have been able to find a spot. Just as he got out of the car, Kevin saw banners from lots of different schools that trained people in herbal medicine. Some of them had pretty harsh reputations. "I didn't expect it to be this crowded so early in the day," Kevin said anxiously. "A lot of people have only heard of herbal medicine but never had a chance to see how it's done with their own eyes." Professor Colt walked with Kevin to the registration table. "You mean we're going to prepare pills in full view of the public?" Kevin asked in surprise. With the training that Kevin had already received, he could be considered a high-ranking expert. One thing he was sure of was that you needed a relatively quiet place if you wanted to do it right. If there's too much background noise, the herbalist can be distracted and have trouble controlling the fire accurately, which will affect the final quality of the pill. The other thing he was concerned about is that you can sometimes have an explosion, which had already happened in Professor Colt's class on campus. Before the professor could answer his question, they heard a booming voice on the PA system.
"Hello, everyone. I'm Pavel Dobson, the host of this year's Herbalism Contest. It's a great honor to have you here at Grand Park on this fine day. I'd like to take this opportunity to announce the rules of this herbalism competition. There are 50 herbalists who will be preparing a variety of concoctions. Whoever succeeds in reaching the highest grade of purity will be declared the winner. Now, please remember to keep quiet so that we can create a suitable environment for all the contestants."
As Dobson stopped speaking, the contestants began walking over to their tables. The crowd was excited to see how this would turn out. Turning to Professor Colt, Kevin thought to himself, "No matter what happens next, I'm ready. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I only wish that Lily was here with me." Kevin whispered to himself as he accompanied Professor Colt to the herbalist contest at Grant Park in downtown Chicago. The spectators gasped as the tables were unveiled, and you could see 50 furnaces set up with all the tools and ingredients necessary for the preparation of a medicinal pill. It was an impressive sight, and not one that you would expect to see in the park. Most people went there for concerts and food festivals. This promised to be a unique event, to say the least. As the contestants walked over to their tables, Kevin and Professor Colt searched for number 36, which had been assigned to them at registration. Some of the spectators were students at the School for the Healing Arts. One of them remarked, "Look, isn't that Professor Colt over there?" Their companion replied, "I think you're right. What's she doing here?" But then someone else said, "Hey, who's the man standing next to her? Holy, I think it's that guy who married into the Jones family." As usual, this brought laughter from the other students. They just didn't recognize Kevin's potential. Doug Butler and Sherwin Blair were also there, and they were immediately jealous of Kevin. "I didn't expect to see that Professor Colt's assistant," Doug said in surprise. "She probably took pity on him. What else would he be doing here?" Blair said with a laugh. What they didn't know was that Dalton Steele was also there, and he heard everything they were saying.
He walked quickly over to Blair and glared at him menacingly. "If you're here to watch the contest, go ahead and watch. But if you're here for anything else, you can get the hell out of here. I don't want to hear a peep from you for the rest of the day." Dalton harshly reprimanded the whole group. They all knew who he was, and they also knew his reputation. Blair was afraid of getting Dalton angry again, so he chose to keep the rest of his comments to himself. But in the front row, there was someone in a VIP seat giving Kevin an icy look like she wanted to kill him. She'd been to the Williams family mansion recently. When she was invited to attend the herbalism contest, she agreed right away without thinking twice about it.
Kevin attends the herbalist contest with Professor Colt, sparking jealousy and ridicule from his peers. However, Dalton Steele intervenes, silencing the critics. What secrets is the mysterious woman in the VIP section hiding, and what does she want from Kevin?
Is that Kevin Williams, the outcast from the Williams family? Then she wondered, how could a like him be allowed to take part in such a serious competition? It's absolutely shameful. But since the contest was already in full swing and so many people were watching, this wasn't a good time to get even with Kevin. That would have to wait. Each of the contestants began choosing ingredients and starting fires so that they could refine their pills at just the right temperature. "Kevin, bring me those 2 ingredients over there." Professor Colt pointed at 2 containers as she started to adjust the flame under the large bronze pot. "Professor Colt, are you going to prepare the metamorphosis pill?" Kevin asked in a low voice after he handed her the materials. "Oh, have you heard of the metamorphosis pill?" Professor Colt's tone contained a hint of surprise. "I've read about it in an old book." Kevin was lying to her. In fact, not only did he know how to prepare the pill, but he also knew just how powerful the medicine was. It could make someone immediately jump an entire level of training. But there were 2 conditions that had to be strictly followed. First of all, it could only be used before someone had reached a certain level of development. And you could only take 1 pill in your entire lifetime. If you took more, it would have a reverse effect and you'd never be able to make any more progress for the rest of your life. That was very important to keep in mind. Kevin remembered reading that it wasn't a very advanced process, but it was good for someone who was still learning herbalism. Professor Colt didn't speak anymore. She just focused on controlling the flame under the big pot. All of a sudden, Kevin's nose twitched. He could smell that the medicine in the bowl was becoming extremely unstable. "Professor Colt, do you think that the temperature might be a little too high?" Kevin wrinkled his eyebrows as he reminded her to watch the flame. "It's okay. This is a very special recipe, and the ingredients need to be at a very high temperature or none of the chemicals can be extracted from them." Professor Colt smiled as she explained to Kevin what she was doing. "No, Professor, the medicine has already started to get unstable. You'd better turn down the heat a little bit." Kevin didn't agree with his teacher at all. He knew the temperature was getting too high. That's when Kevin realized something about Professor Colt. Although she definitely knew how to make herbal pills, she had a lot of trouble controlling the flame. Her techniques still hadn't been developed. "I said it's okay, Kevin. Don't worry about it." Professor Colt explained carefully what she was doing. "Maybe you've heard of the metamorphosis pill, but have you ever made one? Watch me closely and you may learn something." When he heard this, Kevin shook his head gently and thought to himself, "Professor Colt may be my teacher, but it's very clear that she is making a huge mistake. Her concoction is going to explode and we are going to be out of the competition. Since I need to keep my powerful knowledge a secret from her, I will let her make this mistake and then take over once her pill fails. Only I will have to throw in 1 extra ingredient when she isn't looking to stop the formula from exploding. That way I will still be able to use the bowl to create my own pill." Just then, Kevin heard a muffled explosion after another from the other tables. As Professor Colt turned to look at their competitors, Kevin quickly dropped a vial of magnesium into the concoction and smiled to himself. The magnesium will help protect the bowl from Professor Colt's impending explosion.
Just like Kevin predicted, after an hour and a half, suddenly Professor Colt's bowl made a dull popping sound. How could that have happened? Professor Colt's face suddenly turned pale. Kevin sighed. He'd been expecting this for a while now. Professor Colt, I warned you that the temperature was getting too high. Luckily, the bowl is still solid and there wasn't an explosion. Kevin reassured her as cheerfully and optimistically as he could. That's impossible. I've made metamorphosis pills several times in the past. Her eyes were full of disappointment. I think it's because of the bowl and flame setup. You're used to having steel or ceramic containers, but they gave us bronze for this competition, Kevin explained carefully. You're right. You warned me about it before. I should have listened to you. What are we going to do now? Professor Colt looked around in a panic, especially when she saw that some of the other teams had already finished making their pills. Even though the herbalism competition is held every year, this was the first time Professor Colt had taken part in it, and she was really looking forward to doing well. If it ended in failure, she was certainly going to be very sad for a long time. Professor Colt, I have an idea. Why don't you let me make the pills instead of you? Kevin smiled and tried his best to sell her on the idea. In fact, he was also eager to have this opportunity to train. After all, the only way to make any progress was to practice. This would be a great chance for Kevin to hone his skills. Professor Colt was stunned at Kevin's suggestion and immediately began to struggle with the decision. Could Kevin really do it? The contest would be over in less than half an hour. Please, let me have a try, Professor. Since your concoction failed, you're a little psyched out right now. Even if you had another 2 hours, you probably wouldn't be able to do it. If I give it a try, we still have a glimmer of hope. Kevin knew that he could win this competition. He just had to convince her to give him a chance. Professor Colt wasn't sure what to do. Herbalism wasn't something to take lightly, and Kevin was just her assistant. She hoped to compete in other events in the future. What would they say if they knew she'd let her assistant take over? Besides, there was hardly any time left. Even if Kevin knew what he was doing, there are some things you just can't do in half an hour. But then Professor Colt thought of another problem. Kevin was right that she was freaked out. So even if he just made some basic pill, nothing fancy, that would still be better than a complete failure for their team. Well, come on, let's do it. Professor Colt finally decided and stepped back from the table so Kevin could step up and try to save them from a humiliating loss. This immediately attracted everyone's attention. The spectators in the VIP section definitely took notice. An assistant was taking the place of the main contestant? This was absolutely unheard of. As usual.
As the clock ticks down and the tension builds, one thing is certain: the outcome of the contest will be far from predictable. Will Kevin's risk pay off, or will it prove to be a costly mistake? Can he overcome the doubts and skepticism of the crowd and prove himself as a true herbalism master? And what secrets is Kevin hiding? Secrets that could either propel him to victory or sabotage his chances forever.
As usual, the students who knew Kevin started making snide remarks. Hey, Kevin's taking over for Professor Colt. What the heck's he going to do? Just showing off again, another student commented. They all started laughing hysterically. But when they saw Dalton's fierce eyes sweeping over the group, everyone quickly shut their mouths. At one of the tables, there was a puff of red, yellow, and blue smoke, and the woman who'd been working on the pill reached in and pulled out her creation. The host, Pavel Dobson, announced cheerfully, "It's unbelievable. Contestant number 10 has actually produced a youth pill. They say that it can make you look 20 years younger. I may have to try that one myself." There were a lot of oohs and ahs from the spectators. Who wouldn't like to take something like that? Wayne Ford, one of the VIP attendees, commented to another, "You have an excellent student there, Richard. As I recall, you were able to do things like that when you were her age." "You're too kind, Wayne. I was just lucky back then." But you could tell that Richard Swinton was very proud of his student. Suddenly, there was a lot of commotion at the contestants' tables. A purple cloud was floating over one of the bowls. "It looks like your student is really good too.
That's a very impressive display, Richard said in surprise.
The other distinguished guest also commented on Wayne's success in training his student. They were all certain that Wayne's student would win first place in the competition. What a great success that would be. Wayne Ford tried to remain calm, but he was very excited at the possibility and the fame that it would bring to his student and his school. Kevin saw what was going on and smiled slightly. Then he took several deep breaths to calm himself down as much as possible so that he could focus. He had to come up with something in 25 minutes and do well enough to place in the top 3. So whatever he did had to turn out just right. After quickly running through all the herbal recipes he knew in his mind, Kevin came to a decision. He reached out and grabbed about 20 different ingredients and laid them on the table in front of the preparation bowl. One of the spectators said very loudly, "What the heck is he doing?" Suddenly all eyes were on Kevin. All the people who had been mocking Kevin earlier were nudging each other and wondering what he was up to. If he succeeded, they were certainly going to look like fools. Sherwin Blair and Doug Butler were watching this with their mouths hanging open in surprise. By now, all the distinguished guests in the VIP section were whispering to each other as they watched what Kevin was doing with great interest. What would happen now that an assistant had traded places with one of the contestants? One of the VIP spectators, a woman who was seated higher than everyone else, was wondering if Kevin actually had enough time to come up with a pill. Kevin got right to work and cleaned his professor's failed attempt out of the bowl. Then he immediately relit the flame so that the bowl could be heated properly before he added the ingredients. He took a deep breath and yelled, "Let's go!" As they watched Kevin add all the ingredients to the bowl, they began whispering to each other. Some of them were convinced that he would fail miserably. How could he possibly accomplish anything with so little time? Others thought that Professor Colt was secretly helping him. He obviously didn't have the skill to do this all by himself. What really shocked them was that he was putting so many ingredients together at the same time. After all, it's not like he was cooking stew. Professor Colt and the woman who was sitting in the high position both frowned as they watched him. The other contestants also had strong doubts, and it showed in their eyes. One of the basic rules for an herbalist was to treat each ingredient differently and only work with them one at a time. Otherwise, the chemicals in the herbs could affect each other and your pill would be worthless. If you really screwed up, the concoction could even explode. But Kevin didn't care about any of these things at all. He adjusted the flame so the temperature in the herbalism furnace climbed higher and higher. As the entire contraption began to tremble, Kevin got a wild look in his eyes and slapped the sides of the bowl. As he pulled the lid off of the brass bowl, the air pressure from the heated contents made the ingredients float in the steam above it. "What the heck is this guy trying to do?" they all wondered. Little did they know that Kevin had more knowledge than all of them combined. Looking at his formula, Kevin smiled to himself. This is for sure the best way to win the contest. Kevin was rushing to prepare an herbal pill in less than half an hour after Professor Colt's recipe had been ruined with too much heat. The entire audience was astonished to see him mixing the ingredients as they floated in the steam above the large bowl. "It's a shame that Professor Colt trusted him to take over, and now he's making a fool of himself," one of the onlookers remarked. Other people who were watching this could be overheard making similar comments. All of a sudden, the audience roared in surprise as they saw a blue cloud appear over the table where a competitive contestant from the East Coast school was working. It was very beautiful, and for the experts who were watching, it was a sign that someone may have won the contest by making an incredibly difficult and powerful pill. Of course, the rest of the audience members had no idea what they were looking at. They were just impressed by the spectacle and started cheering for the contestant who had done such an awesome job. Everyone thought that this would certainly earn her first place. The experts who were watching this were pleased, but at the same time they were a little worried. Although the competing groups seemed to have a good relationship, they were actually keeping an eye on each other the whole time. They were afraid that any powerful young herbalists in the other groups could pose a threat to their own organizations. Just then, Austin Swift, another contestant from the same region, popped the lid off his bowl and removed some bluish-purple pills that seemed to be glowing. Austin started to smile broadly in spite of being so exhausted from the effort. The MC announced to the crowd,
"It looks like Austin Swift has succeeded in producing some very colorful pills. What's the name of the pill? What effect does it have?"
He was hoping to inform the crowd, none of whom had any idea what was going on. Now there were two herbalists who looked like they would take first and second place. Kevin's steam concoction seemed to be forgotten as Austin leaned into the microphone and explained, "It's the reset pill. In less than a minute, it can clear your mind of all negative emotions." But Austin's tone was very arrogant, as if he'd already won first place and he was better than everyone else. No one noticed how the mysterious woman who was sitting in what looked like an umpire's chair at a tennis match suddenly sat up straighter to pay attention to what Kevin was doing. It was like Austin's accomplishment meant nothing at all. Kevin was actually stirring and manipulating his ingredients as they floated in the cloud of steam above his bowl. When the crowd saw the woman's reaction, they looked to see what had drawn her attention, and that's when they noticed what Kevin was doing. Until then, they weren't really interested in him, figuring he was just wasting everyone's time by being there. However, the experts who were watching knew that Kevin's technique was simply amazing. They could see his intense focus and his ability to control the rare herbal ingredients. The woman in the judge's chair was staring intently at Kevin, and the only word she could think of was, "Impossible!" Wayne Ford, one of the instructors whose students were in the contest, commented to the people around him,
"Mixing ingredients as they float in the air? I didn't think anybody could do that anymore. Where did he learn how to do it?"
The other VIPs in the audience couldn't believe their eyes, and the judge in the high seat was the only one there who understood his technique. To other herbalists, it was like magic. The procedure allowed you to control several medicinal ingredients at the same time while they floated in the steam above the bowl. It was an incredibly advanced skill that took a lot of knowledge and artistry. The advantage was, you could control the temperature more precisely, and it allowed you to prepare a pill very quickly, which was just what Kevin needed to do. The judge had only seen this done once in all her time with the Herbalist Society. After a while, Kevin was able to gather the ingredients little by little until they'd melted into the shape of a pill. Professor Colt, who was standing behind him, was stunned. In fact, everyone there was stupefied by his expertise. It's no exaggeration to say that Kevin was the center of attention at the moment. It was like he was the only competitor in the entire contest. Just as Kevin was gathering the remaining ingredients into the pill, you could see electricity arcing around the bowl. It looked like a Van der Graaf generator. He can do that too? The judge was in awe. Kevin had one surprise after another. The VIPs who were watching this were tempted to rush over and protect Kevin from the static discharges that were arcing out from around the bowl. While they were all in fear for Kevin's safety, he didn't seem to care at all. In fact, he seemed to be enjoying it. Just then, a giant spark jumped out and struck the pill. Kevin's hair stood on end and he looked like some kind of mad scientist, which he kind of was at the moment. Everyone held their breath, wondering if Kevin's pill had been destroyed by the enormous discharge of electricity. But it was still there, and over the next couple of minutes, Kevin let it happen a dozen more times. Professor Colt and everyone else who had been standing nearby retreated to a safe position about 20 feet away. As the electricity jumped to the pill, it also seemed to get absorbed by Kevin's body. This was probably what the Night King had been talking about. Just seconds before the end of the contest, the sparks died down and the vapor above Kevin's bowl dissipated into the air. When the bell rang, Kevin was holding his pill in his open hand. The audience sat there quietly, and not a single one of them was mocking him. The VIPs were also silent. They stared uncertainly at Kevin, unsure as to what to think about what they just witnessed.
"What kind of pills are you refining, sir?"
The host stumbled for a moment and almost called him assistant. Even the arrogant Austin Swift, who had just been in the limelight, couldn't come close to what Kevin was attempting. A primal pill. The judge practically leapt to Kevin's side, staring at the pill in his hand.
He made a primal pill? How is that even possible?
Wayne commented loudly. Professor Colt thought she was going to pass out. She couldn't even believe that this was true. Dalton waved his fist excitedly. Even though he didn't know what a primal pill was, it had to be something fantastic to get this kind of reaction from all the experts. Yes, Kevin replied simply. This is a primal pill. It can transform whoever takes it. I'm glad nobody was shocked by the final step in its preparation. Kevin joked about the technique he'd used. Just then, the judge snickered. It's a pity it didn't work. According to our records, the color of the primal pill should be dark blue, but this one is only light blue, so it appears that you didn't complete the process. However, this is enough to prove that you're already very proficient at herbalism. You should do very well as an apothecary. She announced this very loudly so that the entire audience could hear. When they heard her ruling on Kevin's pill, the VIPs looked very relieved. It would have been extremely embarrassing for them and their students if a mere assistant had won the grand prize in the contest. Kevin couldn't believe it. He took a look at the pill in his hand and then he raised his head and stared at the judge. He knew that he'd made it according to the instructions in his sources. How could he have made a mistake? Professor Colt was looking a little depressed too. After seeing Kevin's concoction, she was sure that he would win first place in this contest. Who knew that something like this was going to happen? Suddenly, somebody laughed, and then the whole crowd broke out into uproarious laughter. I can't believe I was starting to think that Kevin had real talent. What a waste of time for nothing. Sherwin Blair pointed at him and laughed until his stomach hurt. What a fake, Doug Butler shouted. How could Professor Colt have picked Kevin as her assistant? How embarrassing. While this discussion was going on in the crowd, the judge asked, Is your name Kevin? Yes, it is. Who are you? Kevin was feeling pretty low. Then he thought of something. He knew that he'd made the primal pill correctly. The judge had to be favoring all the VIPs in their schools. Is this how things worked in the herbalism world? In full view of the public, she was willing to play this kind of trick? After dealing with his wife Lily's family for the past few years, Kevin was tired of dealing with liars and cheaters. He had no patience for a crooked judge. My name is Nadia Alexander. I'm the president of the southern branch of the Herbalist Society. I see you have a lot of talent. Would you like to become one of my students? She asked Kevin very seriously. Her question attracted a lot of attention from the people around them. It was quite an invitation from a very highly ranked expert. They watched enviously to see how Kevin would respond. His answer surprised everyone. Sorry, I'm not interested. I already have a teacher. It was obvious that Kevin had already made up his mind. Why not? Nadia was smiling. She wasn't angry at all, just curious. She looked intensely into Kevin's eyes. Because I'm sure that there's nothing wrong with my pills. Can't you see that I'm qualified to be a master herbalist? Kevin took his pill and put it in his pocket. It sounds like you have a lot of confidence in your abilities, Nadia commented pleasantly. Kevin was a little confused. She seemed like a decent person, so why was she doing something like this? Just then, a loud voice cried out. I will make you pay for what you've done to me! Turning to his right, Kevin saw someone from the VIP section pull out a dagger and run towards him. It was Ariana Titus, the woman who had been eyeing Kevin so venomously earlier in the day. But before Kevin had a chance to react, he saw the metal glint in the sunlight as the dagger's point stopped just an inch below his sternum. The only reason it wasn't plunged right through his belly was that Nadia had stepped in and placed her hand on top of the attacker's wrist and stopped it. Everyone gasped. They knew that it took an incredibly strong person to do what she'd just done. You shouldn't play with knives. Someone may get hurt. Nadia sneered. Then she bent the attacker's wrist, pulled the dagger out of her hand, and tossed it point first into the ground. President Alexander, please get out of my way. This shameless die for what he's done. She stared at Kevin fiercely. After everything the Williams family had told Ariana about Kevin, she couldn't control her anger. She didn't even care that she was doing this right in the middle of a public contest in downtown Chicago. But Ariana, I haven't announced the final results. Don't you have any respect at all for the Herbalist Society? Nadia was doing her best to hide her anger from the crowd, but she was obviously furious with Ariana for interrupting the contest. Ariana shook her head. President Alexander, you may not know it, but Kevin is from the Williams family in New York. 3 years ago, he colluded with outsiders to misappropriate family funds. After being expelled from his own family, he latched onto the Jones family in Chicago and started draining their funds, too. Then, not too long ago, he had a big fight at his cousin Monty Aspinwall's wedding. His cousin's marriage ended in failure because of it. Then he got a bunch of criminals to ruin the Williams family's business. She continued to rail against Kevin. The worst thing is that he went to his family's mansion in New York with his gangsters and fought with his own grandfather, injuring a lot of his own family members in the process. What a joke! Kevin's actually the loser who got himself kicked out of the Williams family? Sherwin Blair said with a laugh. In the crowd, Kevin's associates turned to each other in confusion. Dalton then stared at Kevin. He knew that his spiritual brother couldn't be the bad guy in all of this. Something else was definitely going on. Officer Emmett's disappointment showed on her face. She really wanted to believe in Kevin's character, but these were some pretty strong accusations. She tried to keep an open mind about it. With an ethereal power, Kevin slowly shook his head. Ariana is mistaken. I have never done any of those things. This is all a big misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Is your grandfather framing you? Or is the whole Williams family framing you? Then, with a disgusted look on her face, Ariana sneered. If you didn't do anything, why were you driven out of your family? Taking a deep breath, Kevin thought to himself. Ariana is ridiculous. She is stating these false accusations without any real evidence. My greedy family has been publicly trying to make me the scapegoat for their failures. I'm tired of letting them take advantage of me. I'm going to put an end to things right now. He deserves to pay for his crimes, Ariana screamed at Kevin. With a powerful nod, Kevin gave a soft smile. Ariana, I'm sorry to say that you fell for my family's lies. What evidence do you have to support your accusation? Nadia looked at Kevin and then back at Ariana several times. She thought for a moment and then announced, I'm sorry, Ariana, but you'll have to calm down. Since there's nobody from the Williams family here right now, none of what you said can be verified. Then Nadia turned to Kevin and said, Well, the contest is over for this year. Come along with me. There were some things that she wanted to say to Kevin, but not in front of so many people. For one thing, as she stopped Ariana's dagger, she was aware of Kevin's strength. There was something special about him. The two of them walked over to the Herbalist Society's tent, which had been set up near the fountain. Kevin looked around the tent and wondered what Nadia wanted to discuss with him. Kevin, I'm asking you again. Would you like to be my student? Nadia walked over to the tent flap and looked outside while Kevin remained silent in thought. Then she continued to try to convince him. You really need to join our society. What everyone saw today will draw a lot of attention from some very powerful people, both good and bad. There are some evil individuals who won't let you go so easily, but we can protect you from them. Aren't you afraid of provoking them? Kevin asked in surprise. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into by revealing your talents like that. Nadia turned around and smiled gently. For a talented herbalist who can create a perfect primal pill in half an hour, you can't afford to offend the experts from all 10 major herbalism schools. What did you say? Kevin was shocked to hear Nadia call his pill perfect.
Don't you think I can tell a good pill from a bad one? Nadia smiled enigmatically. I'm sorry, but I did it to protect you. To protect me? Kevin was obviously stunned and asked her, or are you just protecting the schools? Nadia wasn't surprised to hear Kevin say that. I'm not sure you understand the consequences of what you did today. She took a deep breath and explained the danger Kevin was in. There are a lot of people who would do absolutely anything to have access to your skills. Their only goals are money and power. If you let them know your true talent, they'll try to win you over and then use you for their own evil plots. They'll take everything they can from you and then toss you aside. When Kevin heard this, his eyes grew wide. What Nadia was saying was absolutely right. Kevin could easily be on the run for the rest of his life. He'd probably have to get a new identity. Only for him, that would never be an option. He couldn't leave his wife Lily behind. Not after everything they'd been through. But if you choose to join the Herbalist Society, things will be totally different. Nobody would be able to touch you. Nadia said this confidently, and Kevin could see the sincerity in her eyes. Since Nadia was still young, she had some pretty lofty goals in the society. She was good at training students, and someone like Kevin could help her to move up in the ranks. But Kevin's reply pulled the rug right out from under her. I'm sorry, but I'm really not interested, Kevin answered her casually. Well, I can see that your mind is made up, so I won't keep you any longer. But I promise you one thing. Our door will always be open if you change your mind. Nadia smiled very genuinely and added, You can leave now. I'll arrange for someone to give you your prize for the contest. You'd better give it to Professor Colt. To be honest, I'm not interested in the top 3 awards at all. Kevin turned around and walked out of the tent. As Kevin walked away, Nadia's smile grew wider. What a wonderful student he would be. Kevin was extremely upset when he got home, and he spent the rest of the afternoon sitting on the sofa with Lily. Even though they were still figuring things out, she was still the most important person in the world to him. And on a day like today, he needed her comforting presence more than ever. After Lily had gone to bed, Kevin's phone rang. It was Spencer, his deputy from the Myriads organization. Why are you calling this late? Kevin asked. Spencer took a deep breath. Your plan went very smoothly, Enforcer. The Hill family has been removed from Detroit. We took over all their industries and businesses. Craig Hill was killed and we abducted all of his children. After thinking for a while, Spencer went on to say, Unfortunately, Nolan Hill somehow managed to get away. But you can rest assured that he probably won't make it through the night. Forget about it. The Hill family's been destroyed. Even if Nolan survives, he won't be able to do anything, Kevin said happily. Then he asked Spencer, Have you checked the family's property? Of course, Enforcer. You may not know it, but the Hill family had a pretty bad reputation in Detroit. They really made a lot of enemies. Plus, they were selling illegal goods, luxury knockoffs, things like that. Spencer was excited to tell Kevin everything he'd found out. Spencer, please remember that we have to draw the line somewhere. Now that we've taken control of the Hill family's business, we have to treat their employees and local residents really well so we can improve our image. Kevin paused for a moment and then gave Spencer another order. One more thing. Shut down all those illegal companies and get them producing more legitimate merchandise. I'll send you some help. Kevin excitedly hung up the phone and called Tyler Cook and a few other business associates. He wanted them to send some of their people to Detroit to straighten things out. The next morning, Kevin drove to campus. As soon as he entered the classroom, he realized that something was wrong. All the other students were glaring at him. But Kevin just ignored them and sat down next to Dalton. How's it going, bud? Have you recovered? Kevin asked with a smile.
Yeah, I'm strong as a horse, Dalton replied as he thumped his chest.
That's great. Kevin patted Dalton on the shoulder. Hey, I've got some good news for you. The Hill family was destroyed last night. The only one who got away was that Nolan.
That's fantastic.
Dalton slapped his hand hard on his desk, drawing everyone's attention.
So, Kevin, do you know who did it? That must have been something to see, Dalton said excitedly.
He hated the Hill family ever since Nolan had beaten him up and left him for dead. Unfortunately, even though the Steele family was really powerful, they wouldn't stand a chance against the Hills. Professor Colt walked into the classroom. Unfortunately, the lab still hadn't been cleaned up, so they could only have a lecture. But something about her didn't look right. She seemed a little depressed, probably because of what had happened the day before at the herbalism contest. Mike raised his hand and did his best to brown-nose her.
Professor Colt, some students say they saw you at the contest yesterday. How'd you do?
She didn't answer him, but just nodded her head slightly.
Who knew that Kevin could even make pills? Someone told me that he made a real mess of things.
Wade joined in to try to win points with the professor.
It was useless. He failed completely.
Luther trumpeted loudly so that everyone could hear him. Suddenly, they all burst out laughing while Mike looked at Kevin contemptuously. The reason why Mike had mentioned it wasn't to laugh at Professor Colt's failure, but to ridicule Kevin.
Everybody work hard so you don't end up like Kevin.
Luther didn't want to miss a chance to mock him either. Mike kept trying to flatter the professor.
I think Kevin cheated Professor Colt out of her chance to win. If he hadn't interfered, she would have done great.
Professor Colt quickly came to Kevin's defense.
Okay, let's not make fun of Kevin anymore. Yesterday was all on me. I didn't control the temperature well, so my pill was destroyed. It had nothing to do with anyone else. In fact, Kevin even warned me about it, but I foolishly didn't listen to him.
However, the students just thought she was covering up for Kevin.
Professor Colt, we all know you're just being nice, but you don't have to do that. We're sure it was all Kevin's fault.
Mike smiled and tried to look understanding. Then Luther stood up and pointed at Kevin.
You're a loser who will never amount to anything. Aren't you ashamed of what you did?
Dalton didn't even give Kevin a chance to react. He rolled up his sleeves and scowled at Luther.
What the hell is wrong with you? Kevin's never done anything to you. Why do you always bully him?
After scolding Luther, Dalton glared at the rest of the class.
You guys think you're so great? But if you had any ability, you'd enter a contest yourselves instead of just sitting around dumping on Kevin.
Seeing the students look around in shock, Kevin thought to himself, I don't need to prove anything to my peers. I'll just wait for the next competition. Every time they underestimate me, it gives me a chance to prove them wrong. A few seconds later, Professor Colt cleared her throat.
Now that everyone is quiet, let's begin our class. Today I'll tell you about the preparation method for the metamorphosis pill, as well as its properties and the required ingredients and conditions.
But before she could say anything else, a man knocked on the classroom door.
Excuse me for the interruption. Are Professor Colt and Kevin Williams here today?
Everyone turned their heads towards the doors like they were a bunch of owls.
I'm Professor Colt. Who are you?
She had no idea what this was about.
Good morning, Professor. I was sent by President Alexander to give you an award. For some reason, yesterday the President mistakenly thought that there was something wrong with Kevin's pill. As it turns out, he was actually successful, and he's been recognized as the contest's overall champion. So President Alexander asked me to send both of you her apologies on behalf of the entire society.
After the man said this, he placed a box on the table at the front of the room and then he left. The whole classroom fell silent. Everyone was staring at the box on the table in front of Professor Colt. So not only had Kevin successfully made the pill, but he'd also impressed the judge. Mike's put-downs had been making Professor Colt feel worse and worse, but now she was starting to feel a whole lot better. Once she'd gotten over the shock and come back to her senses, the professor announced,
Since you prepared the pill, Kevin, you should get the award.
No, Professor. I was just your assistant. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have even been there. I think it's only right for you to accept it. Kevin answered with a smile as he thought to himself, My ambitions are far more important than a silly award. I'll let Professor Colt accept this reward so that I can focus on more crucial things. Professor Colt realized she couldn't win, so she gave in and accepted the award. The rest of the class was pretty boring compared to the big news. She did her best to talk about the metamorphosis pill, but the students had a hard time concentrating. When the class was about to end, Penny suddenly turned around and looked at Kevin. "I had no idea you were such a superb herbalist." She knew that Austin Swift had made a reset pill, but the man who dropped off the award said that Kevin was the champion, which means that he'd done even better than Austin. "Well, I'm just a beginner," Kevin answered modestly. "Can I ask you to make a pill for me?" Penny hesitated a little, but it was really important for her. "Do you need some herbal meds?" Kevin was a little surprised. For a family like Penny's, what pills couldn't just be bought? Why did she need him? "One of my best friends has a rare disease and needs something to cure it. But you wouldn't have much to do. We already know what she needs and found the recipe. If you can prepare it for my friend, you can keep the recipe." Penny thought that might entice Kevin to accept. He wondered what it could be. The Sutherland family had gone to a lot of trouble to track down the recipe, so this could be interesting. "That's not necessary. If I make a pill for your friend, you can just treat me to a meal," Kevin replied casually. To increase his skills, it was essential that he had access to every new formula. "Are you so confident? Don't you need to ask me the name of the pill?" Penny asked in surprise. "To tell you the truth, Penny, there isn't an herbal med that I can't make." Kevin may have sounded like he was boasting, but he really felt confident that he could do it. Penny didn't say anything more, but she took a long look at Kevin and decided that he wasn't as useless as everyone said.
"Wow, Kev, you're really good. You've even got Penny asking you for favors."
Dalton put his arm around Kevin's shoulder and said,
"Any chance I could join you?"
"What do you think? Of course you can come along." Kevin shook his head. Sometimes he just didn't understand his friend.
"Then we've got a deal. Don't leave without me," Dalton said with a laugh.
"Dalton Steele, what are you doing? The class hasn't ended yet." Professor Colt scolded Dalton but didn't say a word to Kevin.
"I don't get it. We were both talking. Why did she yell at me and not you?" Dalton whispered.
Kevin smiled and shook his head again. He'd learned it wasn't worth it to argue with Dalton. He pulled out his phone and started to play, making sure that he did a good job of hiding it from the professor. After school, Kevin took Lily back home. Then he got a phone call from Penny. He got back in his car and drove to the address in the western suburbs that Penny had texted him. When Kevin pulled up in front of the mansion, Penny walked out to greet him. Kevin was a little confused. "So what kind of pill do you want me to make? Did we have to come all the way out here to do it?" "After you prepare the pill, you can grab any snack you like," Penny offered. "But this isn't the dinner I promised you. We'll go somewhere else for that. I bought this place to hang out with my friends." When he heard Penny say that, Kevin stared at her and thought to himself, so she bought an entire mansion just to hang out? Is this how her family spends its money? "Come inside, Kevin. Some of my friends are here enjoying themselves." Penny turned around and walked back inside. Kevin hesitated for a moment, wondering what exactly was going on. Taking a deep breath, he whispered to himself, "I hope that this new formula is worth it. I wasn't sure if you were actually going to come." Penny smiled as she held open the door for Kevin. When Kevin arrived at Penny's mansion out in the suburbs, she greeted him at the door and invited him in. He was there to help create a pill to help Penny's friend, who was very ill. But he was surprised to find out that Penny had some friends there hanging out with her. As soon as he walked inside, Kevin was stunned. It wasn't because of all the luxurious furniture and expensive artwork, but because of all the beautiful women hanging out by the pool. Suddenly, he heard a charming voice. "Penny, who is this man you've brought with you? He's just your type, isn't he?" The woman sauntered over to Kevin and lifted up his chin. "He's very handsome, but he's dressed in rags." She paused a moment and asked him, "Tell me, sugar, what's your name?" Kevin stammered, unsure how to deal with her. After all, he had just spent the day before with his wife, Lily. He couldn't let someone like Penny distract him from his goal of reuniting with Lily. "Come on, Brenda, let's not do this again. I didn't bring Kevin here to entertain you." Penny was a little irritated by her friend's behavior. Penny's other friends heard this and came over to check Kevin out. They were a little confused to see him interrupt their get-together. They all knew that Penny hadn't had a steady boyfriend in years, so who was this guy? She was usually interested only in really rich, successful men. At the same time, Kevin was wondering about Penny's friends. Based on her status, he was pretty certain that they were all from very wealthy families. "What are those rags you're wearing?" one of them asked him. "Don't they make you feel uncomfortable?" "Keep your voice down. He's Penny's guest." One of the other women didn't want to offend their host. They were interrupted by a sharp cry. "Kevin, how dare you come here?" Out of the corner of his eye, Kevin could see a figure walking up to him quickly from the doorway. She was tempted to take a swing at Kevin, but picked up on his strong presence and stepped back a little. "Mackenzie," Kevin whispered to himself. He'd recognized her right away as Mackenzie Knott, Penny's friend that Kevin had accidentally seen changing her clothes on a video call when he'd stolen Penny's phone. Mackenzie leaned in and whispered into Kevin's ear, "If you say a word about that video to anyone, I'll kill you. I can't have my friends find out." Before Kevin could reply, Penny stepped forward. "What's the matter with you, Mackenzie? What are the two of you arguing about?" She knew her friend had a hot temper, but she also knew that Mackenzie wasn't in the habit of picking fights with people for no reason at all. "It's just a misunderstanding, Penny. I don't have any idea who this woman is." Kevin tried his best to keep from embarrassing Mackenzie. "I don't know him either." Mackenzie turned her head and looked Penny in the eyes. Then she asked her, "Why did you bring this guy here? We were all having such a good time without him." Penny figured it was as good a time as any to introduce him to her friends. "His name is Kevin, and we're in the same class at the School for the Healing Arts. I invited him here to prepare an herbal med for Mackenzie." Penny felt it was necessary to explain because she could see the confusion in Brenda's eyes. "You're going to let him make a pill for Mackenzie? Penny, are you kidding?" Brenda sneered. One of the other women had her doubts too. "The med that Mackenzie needs would be difficult for a master apothecary to create, let alone some ordinary person." They couldn't believe that this young man dressed in shabby clothes would be able to do something so specialized. They all started to mock Kevin. "Are you sure he can do this, Penny? Herbal meds aren't a joke." Brenda frowned because she was so worried that this could go wrong. "Don't worry." Penny looked at Kevin with a smile and said, "My good friend Mackenzie needs a blood balance pill. Can you create one for her?" Keeping his talent a secret, Kevin tactfully asked, "The blood balance pill is used for someone who's been injured. It seems to me that she's doing fine right now. Is there some other reason you've chosen it?" "Well, Kevin, Mackenzie's been training since she was a child. Her family is really into it and they know a lot about herbal meds. The problem is she has a really hard time with unbearable pain once a month, if you know what I mean. Have you ever heard of endometri—" Penny hesitated because she knew it was a very personal issue for her friend, but she was desperate to help Mackenzie and decided to tell Kevin the whole truth. "Penny, how can you tell him something like that?" Mackenzie looked absolutely horrified. She and her friends had spent a lot of time and effort trying to find a cure for her, but when they finally found a recipe that might help, they couldn't find anyone qualified to prepare it. She was desperate. When he heard this, Kevin suddenly thought of something that he'd learned in his studies. If her problem is what you described, the blood balance pill can only cure the symptoms, not the root cause. "Oh, you mean you have a better way?" Penny's face lit up in surprise. If Kevin was right, there might be another solution. Why not try it? But some of them wondered if Kevin was just trying to impress them, and they eyed him suspiciously. He seemed to be promising something he probably couldn't do. How could they trust him? "I think he's trying to trick you, Penny. You should just show him the door." Mackenzie didn't want to have anything to do with Kevin in this crazy plan. "Don't worry, Mackenzie." In fact, Penny wasn't completely sure herself. Then she added, "Why don't we at least listen to him?" With an all-knowing smile, Kevin thought to himself, "These people have been doubting my power since the second I walked through the door. It will be fun to prove them wrong." Turning to Penny, Kevin announced, "The blood balance pill could help the symptoms a little bit, but it sounds like Mackenzie's problem has been around since childhood. We really need to do something to get at what's causing her problems." Having said that, Kevin stopped for a moment and then asked cautiously, "Have you ever heard of the repair pill?" Everyone's eyes bugged out when they heard him say that. The repair pill was only a myth as far as they were concerned. It hadn't been used in a ridiculously long time, and the closest thing to it was strictly controlled by the Herbalist Society. But Mackenzie didn't have any connections to the society, so it was impossible for her to get one. "Can you actually make a repair pill?" Penny asked in shock. She'd been worried about her friend constantly and was willing to try anything. That's the whole reason she'd brought Kevin over to her place. "I'm sure I can do it," Kevin said with confidence. "But that's impossible. Nobody knows how to make the repair pill anymore." Mackenzie was the first one to object to the plan. "Are you trying to poison our friend with your nonsense? Do you know what we can do to you if you hurt her?" Brenda was staring daggers at Kevin. She looked like she wanted to gouge his eyes out. Kevin pursed his lips. "I can definitely do it. Only I have one condition." "What condition is that?" Penny looked a little unsure when she saw Kevin smiling so strangely. "If I make the repair pill, then Mackenzie has to apologize for underestimating me." He spoke softly, but they all heard him loud and clear. "You wish!" Mackenzie shot back. The rest of the women frowned at Kevin's demand. After all, Mackenzie was a very important person, not someone to trifle with like that. But if Kevin could really make a repair pill, it would prove that he was greater than all the current experts working in herbal medicine. To do this at such a young age meant his potential was limitless. It was a lot to ask of someone, but if he failed, Mackenzie's friends were sure to get even with him. While everyone was hesitating, Penny suddenly said, "Okay, I promise. As long as you can make the repair pill, you'll get what you want. Even though she can be difficult, Mackenzie always listens to me. You'll get your apology." "It's a deal," Kevin said casually. "But I also have a condition. You must do it right now. There's a quiet room in the basement of my mansion, and it's been set up with a lot of expensive herbal ingredients." Penny clearly wanted to get her friend some help as soon as possible. "No problem, but you can't watch me while I'm doing it." Kevin sounded very firm about this requirement. Then he turned to Penny and said, "Lead the way." Penny gestured for Kevin to follow her. On the way to the stairs, she asked her sisters to stay on the main floor and enjoy themselves while she was gone. A few minutes later, Kevin saw what Penny meant about the quiet room. As soon as he entered the basement, Kevin was stunned. The lab took up the entire floor, the whole footprint of the house. There were loads of medicinal materials on the mahogany shelves along the walls, and there was a large bronze bowl with a burner set up in the middle of the room. Wow, Penny really prepared for this. I wonder if she wants to learn to be an herbalist too, Kevin thought to himself. I had people search all over the country to find all the medicinal ingredients down here. You can use whatever you need for the repair pill. Then Penny walked out so that Kevin would have a quiet environment to work. Well, I'd better get busy. Kevin rubbed his hands together and then hurried over to the shelves to select all the exotic herbs he would need. Kevin was tempted to make another pill that he'd always wanted to try just for the practice, but decided to focus on the repair pill first. More than an hour later, Kevin took the lid off of the preparation bowl and removed a handful of pills. Yes, these look good to me. Kevin proudly looked at the pills he'd just made and grinned broadly. After putting the repair pill into a small medicine bottle for Mackenzie, Kevin put the rest into his pocket. Suddenly, his body tensed up. He turned around and took a few steps backwards when he saw a dark figure walk up behind him. He hadn't been aware that someone else was in the room until he heard them breathing. "Who are you?" Kevin asked cautiously. The person seemed dangerous and Kevin had been caught a little off guard. but they didn't answer Kevin's question right away. Are you a member of the Sutherland family? Kevin glanced around the basement and tried his best to find a way out. Please don't jump to any conclusions. I'm helping Penny to make some herbal pills. I'm not a burglar or anything. Suddenly, the person's eyes seemed to light up, and their breathing suddenly changed. Kevin didn't really know what to make of this. Were they there to hurt him? Trust me, I'm just here to help Penny out. Kevin started to get ready to fight. He thought to himself, I didn't expect Penny to have someone like this watching over her. But when Kevin looked into the person's eyes, it was like staring at a wolf. He could hear his own heartbeat. I'm here to bring you to the party. Let me invite you to come with me. The person's voice was very cold, without the slightest emotion, and it was also neutral. You couldn't tell whether it was a man or a woman. The party? Kevin suddenly thought of something. Wasn't today the Alliance leader's birthday? His mentor, the Night King, had warned him about the importance of attending. Well, can you let me take the medicine upstairs first? Then I'll go to the headquarters with you. Kevin spoke quickly. I've offended the Alliance messenger. The person suddenly moved toward Kevin. Don't do it! Kevin stepped forward too, and they both collided in an explosion of energy. Penny, Mackenzie, and the other women were all lounging around on the sofas in the living room upstairs. Penny, do you really think Kevin can make a repair pill? Brenda asked seriously. To tell you the truth, I don't know why so many people at the school treat him like a loser. He can often do some unexpected things. Penny had a thoughtful look in her eyes. Even though he dresses in cheap clothes, I know he's not short on cash. I'm pretty sure he's got a lot of secrets. So he's probably just throwing his family's money around. What's the big deal? Mackenzie pouted and said angrily, But I'm still not going to beg him for the repair pill. Mackenzie, what's the deal with you and Kevin? But before Penny had finished speaking, she jumped up as she heard a loud bang, and then the whole mansion began to shake, as if there were an earthquake. What's going on? Was there an explosion? One of the women shouted in panic as she fell to the floor. Calm down, it's not an earthquake, it's something else, and it sounds like it's coming from the basement. Brenda immediately got up from the sofa. The basement? Oh no, Kevin! Penny shouted as she quickly ran toward the stairs to the basement. When she and her friends got downstairs, there was no trace at all of Kevin. All they saw was a mess. All kinds of medicinal ingredients were strewn about the floor, and even the large preparation bowl was knocked over, with a puff of smoke wafting out of the burner. To Penny's surprise, a huge hole had appeared in the basement wall, and you could see a sliver of moonlight shining in. Kevin ran away? Mackenzie was the first to react and said angrily, I told you he was lying to you, Penny. No, it's something else. There was a fight down here. Brenda looked around the room warily. She was the most skilled fighter in the group. If anything happened, it would be up to her to protect her friends. But where's Kevin? Penny thought to herself. I can't believe that I forgot about the Alliance leader's birthday party. Kevin told himself as he sat next to the mysterious Alliance member in an unmarked car. It was a dark night, and there was a cool wind blowing across the Alliance headquarters property. Kevin had been blindfolded by the Alliance member and had no idea where he was. Taking a deep breath, he thought about how his wife, Lily, might worry about him. The last thing that he needed was for her to come looking for him. On top of that, it was the Alliance leader's birthday, and Kevin hadn't shown up yet for the celebration. He wasn't sure if he'd been taken to the Alliance headquarters to be punished. Just then, someone opened the car door and escorted Kevin into an enclosed building. Just as Kevin got his grounding, a hand reached forward and removed the blindfold. Madam Director, I've brought Kevin back like you asked.
Please subscribe to the Pocket FM YouTube channel and press the bell icon for instant notification. Check out our channel for more such exciting shows.